Welcome to Oregon Voters Digest, the program that brings forward the social and political issues that are important to people living here in the Pacific Northwest. And now, your host, Bruce Broussard.
Okay, let's start off right off the bat by your hosts, Bruce Broussard and Teresa Depay. We're the hosts today, and right up front with you. It was such a busy week that you really need some support. I mean, it was a busy week. And forget the national perspective. I'm talking about here in the Portland metropolitan area, in the state of Oregon. And really, that's where we are, Oregon Voters Digest. And that's what we're bringing to you, the crowd out there. And so we're gonna spend some time here in the largest city in the state of Oregon. That's Portland, Oregon. That's probably the lead, folks, if you will, as far as we're concerned, politically or whatever. And there were two major issues that hit the table. One was the selection of the police department chief of police by our mayor here in Portland, Ted Wheeler. Ted Wheeler. These guys come around, so they all look alike to me. I hate to put it that way. I didn't hit that too hard. You didn't get that one, did you? And then we had our superintendent of schools, Portland Public Schools. We got a Latino, a Hispanic coming on who's going to be the superintendent of school. Boy, I tell you, it's going to be very interesting, yeah? I mean, you know, whatever comes to mind, I won't say that, Don. You told me about that, right? About the safe city type thing. What was that thing? What was the name of that group that we're talking about? We'll talk about that.
ICE?
No. Sanctuary City.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But that's another issue that we're going to be talking about at one point in time. But I want you to recognize the fact that Teresa has been an asset here on the Oregon Voters Digest. That's why I said she's co-hosting today, because with these strange characters, and then JD and Don, it's going to be very. But anyway, it's a little funding deal on the side. But there were some serious things. But sometimes, if we really want to get down to the solution of the matter, you have to be a little funsy about it, aspect of it, and not get so serious that it can't be resolved. We need solutions. And we made some pretty major solutions with the chairman of the board. And Don's got the solution big time. He's going to remind me of Stan Peters. I won't tell you what Stan used to do in front of city council. But anyway, that's another story aspect of it. But what we're going to do, like I said, the first half hour, we're going to talk a little bit about police work. We got our local policeman here and my chief of police when I was running for mayor during the time. He was the mayor. I was the mayor, and I was the chief. In fact, we were both. He was a chief mayor, and I was a chief mayor. We ran this city, right, Don?
I think so, yeah.
Okay, sounds great to me.
I'm trying to remember what happened.
There you go. And then now he's such a scholar now, I can't even talk to him anymore. He's got his degree and this, that, and the other. Yeah. Beforehand, he could talk to me, and we could talk and this, that, and the other. Now I've got to sit there and listen to what he has to say. He said, Bruce, over here in the back, over here somewhere, I'll tell you what's going on, Eugene. But anyway, he's always a pleasure. In fact, he's been an asset since on the show. That's why we have him on so much, because if you want to talk about police work here in the city of Portland, it's Don. Don was there. He was there. He's got the history. He's got that background. So again, welcome, buddy.
Thank you, sir.
Always a pleasure. Okay.
Thank you. Yeah.
And then we've got within our president, JD Chandler.
Hi.
JD, again, I met him through, guess who? We interviewed him, guess who? Where? Right here on Oregon Voters Digest. And again, another history buff, big time.
Yes.
One from the standpoint of police, but other things too. Civil rights issues and things of that nature. He's an excellent writer aspect of it, and boy, he's just an asset, because when you start thinking about history and background and whatever, Oregon Voters Digest, that's what we are. And it's kind of neat to have a person like JD on, and hopefully he's going to be here. He's going to have a lot of face time because again, too, we need to do that. And we want to make sure that you welcome home here now, and appreciate that very much. And
glad to be here.
Appreciate that very much, JD. And then naturally, my old sidekick here, my right buddy, the whole 9 yard, is Teresa. I mean, I wouldn't know what to do without her, point blank. I mean, she's very assertive and this, that, and the other. She'll say her mind, and I finally figured out what Facebook was all about. And then, just Bruce, do your thing. And now I understand what Facebook is. I do more posting than I do writing, because I like those ideas. Don likes that too. Actually, I'm sending it to Don on them posting. He likes those posting things. You know what I'm saying? And I don't have to research anything. They're right there for you. Bang! You throw them out and get another one. Really good deal. But again, Teresa has been a value to the show. And I'm spending this much time at this point in time because we got a lot of work to do, folks. And we're going to be spending a lot of time on this stuff here. And as one would say, no person is an island. And that's what I'm sharing, if you will. And so you may sit me in this chair, but you're going to be seeing any one of these guys are sitting at the chair, and Teresa's going to be on that end of it. But again, I want to thank all of you. And I want to thank you, the viewing audience, that you're out there here now. And it's very important that you understand what we're doing. It's very important that you get the information, because we don't read the papers. Now that we've got this smartphone piece, but this is a start. I mean, start getting on the personal standpoint, but now you'll be able to understand what's going on around you. And that's going to be very, very important, because our world has gotten very, very more sophisticated than ever. I mean, you heard this situation up in Carolina right now, this whole issue aspect of it.
In Virginia.
In Virginia.
Yeah.
That is an issue. But again, too, let's put it this way. Is the Civil War. If we had that history, if we were talking about that history back when Lincoln was alive, imagine if he had lived, and we talked about those issues then, we wouldn't be dealing with this issue today. We've got a responsibility to this world, for that matter.
Yes, we do.
Because we're the lead. We're the lead. And so it's very, very important. So that's why I'm so important. Why I've maintained the Oregon Voters Digest. It's a very, very important piece. It's history there. You can go and visit it. You can visit it at the Oregon Historical Society.
The archives, yeah.
The archives of the Oregon Historical Society. You can visit it here on the show routine. We've got an archive, if you will. You can just shoot it and look at the stuff and whatever. And so it's a very important piece, very important too. Now let's get right into the show. Let's get right up into the show. Teresa, why don't you lead? We're talking about police today.
Well,
the new chief.
The new chief, yeah.
Give her an introduction, and what do you think?
Danielle Outlaw. And people are kind of divided. There are a lot of people that don't support the decision to choose her. There are a lot of people that do. I think it's a step in the right direction. I think we should definitely give her a chance. She's going to need to learn about Portland history, and she's going to really need to research the history of the Portland Police Bureau, because she's coming in from outside and she doesn't have a clue about a lot of the history of these guys she's going to be working with. Mm-hmm. So,
JD, what do you think, man?
Well,
here we are, the history.
Yeah,
We
exactly.
are the history.
Yep.
And before I say anything about Danielle Outlaw, I want to first express my solidarity with the people back in Virginia who are fighting the fascists, Heather Hyers, who died. It reminds me of Selma, Alabama in 1965, when people were dying fighting these same people on the same issues, and 1941 fighting the same people on the same issues. We have to remember that people have died for our civil rights, and that we can't turn our back on them. The reason we have to die for them again is because people forgot.
right.
So let's not forget this time.
I agree.
Because people are dying right now
Yes.
for things that our ancestors have died for every generation. So that's my soapbox.
You know, another point on that particular point, those people who have identified as the cause to this problem, we got to interview them. We got to get a sense of where are they coming from, and then
like
all these,
Joey Gibson. When you
right.
Joey Gibson,
That was my point. Was that I let him speak, let them speak, and I'm saying in many ways that history. Had they been getting this in the schools and this, that, and the other, then all of a sudden things make up. But then you got this other media aspect of it that's out there that's kept us divided too.
Well, the thing that people are overlooking is the fact that when these people are held accountable for their actions, it's turning out in most cases these are mentally ill people
Right.
who've been incited to do what
Right.
they did
Right.
by irresponsible people
Right.
like our president.
Exactly. I agree with that. And I also think that I was posting about it this morning on Facebook. Somebody posted about what happened, and I said, I've never met a white supremacist who clearly was an educated or enlightened person. Almost always they're uneducated, illiterate, blue-collar, working class. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but they're not enlightened people. And like JD said, a lot of them are just plain mentally ill and suffering from paranoia. And somebody disagreed with me and said, there are a lot of white supremacists that are very educated. And there are, but they're a really tiny percentage, because most of them are the guys you see on television, the guys that go to the rallies, like the Joey Gibson rallies, the blue-collar working class, have accomplished very little in their lives, and that's the one thing they can say, oh, I'm white, you know.
Well, and the ones who are educated are very cynical about what they're doing, and they're exploiting the
Yeah.
uneducated.
Yeah.
It's a very cynical move that these people are doing.
And I feel, and I mean, it just seems so clear to me that it's because of Trumpism.
It just makes me angry that we have to do this over and over and
Yeah,
over
right.
because we forgot that
Right.
people died for this 50 years ago.
Right.
Well, let's spend more time on that, but I want to make sure
Yeah.
we get our policeman that is on board. He's been here for days, if you will. I know he's just itching. He just really wants to talk about this
I
whole
avoided
issue
the question.
about this person that he recommended to our mayor it should be the chief of police. Don, what do you think today?
I don't know who the other people were.
Okay.
Nobody does. That's the
Is
problem.
one of the problems.
You know?
I would have liked to have known
Yeah.
who they had up besides this lady.
We heard that Charles Moose was there.
Charles Moose was certainly taking another look at it.
Mockman was
Somebody said that there was an assistant chief from Philadelphia who I
Well,
never got to see,
Marshman,
Yeah,
about
Markman.
him. And then there was
former
Marshman,
chief.
who
Yeah,
was
the former
already
chief.
here.
Yeah.
And I know that at one point,
We heard that Mark DeLong.
Mark DeLong was
Right.
Yeah.
put his hat through his hat in the ring. So I don't know who we had a choice from,
Right.
but it's obvious that the choice that Wheeler made was to go outside the city, and I think he picked a qualified person. There's very little doubt about that, but the problem is she's not from here. So if you start from the trailhead, what do you do from here? You have to get to know Portland. Portland is not Oakland.
That's very different.
Portland is not Oakland, and you need somebody to just drive you around town and show you where the neighborhoods are and the mood of the city. And then you need to realize that she's saying that she's not here to reorganize the police
Right.
department, but she does need to reorganize
It
the
does.
police department. The police department here is in dire need of reorganization. My constant criticism of them is they are too specialized. I'm a traffic cop, I'm a vice cop, I'm the gang cop, I'm an intelligence cop. What happened to policemen? So there aren't any policemen anymore. So we need to thin these ranks of specialists out and put policemen on the street. One of the biggest crimes perpetrated against policemen here in Portland was the one-man cars. One-man cars. And there's enough policemen here now. I can figure out a way to put a lot more cars on the street that are two men. You know, you can take a lot of guys out of the traffic division and make two-man cars. You can take them out of internal affairs and put two-man cars. So let's have more generalists. Hey, you're a policeman. If you get a call on a robbery, you take it. If you get a call on traffic, you take it. If you get a call on a murder, you take it. And then you turn it on to the detectives when it's appropriate. But still, we need more generalists, more policemen on the street. And also, first thing I do is get rid of the black uniforms. Go back to blue. Be more soft. I'd also have a couple of volunteer officers that would be willing to go out on the street, again, in slacks and blazers, and see how they respond to the citizens. Let's get back to some community policing ideas, at least. Get them out of these SWAT team uniforms. Stop looking like ninjas, look like policemen, look like detectives. Get back to some of the old ways.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think they need to be humanized more, and blazers and slacks would do that for a certain number of them. But I think one of the most important things Don has said in the past is two-man cars. One-man cars, it has been proven statistically in criminological research that cops get into trouble and there are more deaths when a cop is by himself. We need to have two-man cars, you know, because two people, a man or a woman, two men, whatever, they can handle a person that's resisting, that's being aggressive a lot better than a single cop alone.
The officer that shot Mike Ferguson said,
Mike Brown,
said, if I'd have just had a few more seconds.
30 more seconds.
My backup to come on.
Right. That was Darren Wilson.
Really?
Yeah.
Backup.
Yeah.
One man was one
He
man.
was by himself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If I had just had backup.
On this chief.
Let me get to my point.
You
The problem
the
is-
police. Yeah.
You need to understand, you need to reorganize it.
Okay.
And if you're not going to reorganize it, then, He's just another figurehead.
Okay. Well, let me throw this out to you too. We'll comment on it. Now, she made mention in the article also too that she was going to reside in the Portland area.
Good.
And it's been known that whether it's 75% of the officers are outside of the city limit. And when you started talking about community policing, boy, if you just map those guys all over the place, give them the car to drive home. What do you think, Mr. Comp? What do you think,
Well,
sir?
the city limits is a big area now. I mean, you can live at 160th and Powell and
Yes.
still be in the city.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, and you can live, you can still live in West Slope and be in the city of Portland, because I live in the city of Portland, technically. So, does that make any difference? I don't think so. Letting policemen drive cars home? No.
You're right.
I
But you
think,
know-
I think it's good for her. I think it's a good thing because it shows solidarity with the citizens of Portland. It shows that she's not an elitist. It shows that she wants to live with Portland citizens and be
I
one
mean,
of.
she has a wide opportunity.
Yeah.
You can live in Westmoreland, Eastmoreland,
Yeah.
the West Hills, and still live in the city.
Yeah, but what about the other cops? I'm just saying, because remember in the military, like we got hazardous duty pay. We got hazardous duty pay when you went in certain areas.
Yeah.
I mean, the reason being that is they needed law enforcement. Whatever.
Well, they experimented with that in the early 90s,
Right.
making housing loans for police officers moving into North and Northeast
Right.
Portland.
Right.
I think it's good for police officers to live in the neighborhoods that they're policing. I know that there's resistance to that and there's reasons why not, but I think it's good to have police who are members of the community. And I think what the police bureau needs right now more than anything is leadership. Danielle Outlaw looks like a leader, and I think that's a good thing. I hope that she's able to do what needs to happen here. The thing that concerns me about it all is we don't know the process of picking her. And this seems to be the whole issue with Mayor Wheeler is he doesn't want to let us know what's going
Right.
on. He wants
Yeah.
to tell us when he's made his decisions. He doesn't let
He's
the
too
community
secretive.
be involved.
Yeah.
In fact, they had the community meeting with only with invited guests.
Right.
You know, it's
And it smacks of elitism.
it is elitism.
And I was very resentful that the public didn't even know who was on the roster, who he was considering. Why is that? Why all the secrecy? We have a right to know, you know.
Well, and what the result is good optics. Everything looks good.
Right.
We have a black woman police chief now.
Yeah.
That's a good thing.
Yeah.
It looks good. But is that all?
That's right. That's right.
And
That's right.
with Mayor Wheeler, I'm afraid that might be all.
Well, what was interesting was when she was interviewed. Her first interview was at the police headquarters, and in that interview, the press, only designated press were given the opportunity to ask her questions.
Right.
And there were other press folks. So I was waiting for the Scanner newspaper to be up there, or the Observer, or
Right.
the El Hispanic, or the Asian Reporter.
Right.
You know what I mean? But it was only the major one. Portland. It looked like to me they were pretty well fixed questions. And at
course.
one point in time, there was a comment when someone made, she looked at her smartphone, as if to say she was following the script, so to speak. and the reason why I'm bringing that point up is that remember now, the police department did not endorse Wheeler when he was running for mayor.
Right.
And he made the point then that I'm going outside of the deal. And then he's got the situation with the protesters and this, that, and the other. And then, you know, they've been, Teresa Redford was there, but on all due respect, Teresa was never up front. She was never allowed to speak. But a lot of the folks that were there, really supportive, they would always say basically she was there, but she wasn't there.
Right.
Right.
You got my point? And so she says, well, gee. So now he's selecting a black woman as chief. They was countering that deal. And this is just something that came to mind, if you will. And I was worried about that. So and then he's been meeting with certain blacks in the black community. I'll be right up front with one of the major churches here. He's been meeting with the pastor there. And I'm sure he had he had his hands on in terms of who I want. Can you give me some black folks to get on the committee? In all due respect, I'm not saying not for me with respect, but I've interviewed this person before. Why didn't you come on the show?
Yeah.
We've invited Wheeler on many occasions, if you will. He could have come on the show. He's mayor right now.
Well, because I think in a lot of ways Ted Wheeler is an elitist. I'm just going to be honest and say that. I've emailed him 3 times. He's never responded. Whenever I emailed Amanda Fritz, she responded. I've emailed Dan Saltzman. He responded, or his staff responded. Ted Wheeler's never responded because he's an elitist.
But
Well,
like
and
you said,
it's back. It's hidden deals.
okay,
Yeah.
yes.
He's making deals, and we don't know what goes into those deals.
Right.
That's the way we've done things in Portland, and it's never been good for Portland citizens.
Yeah. The other thing I wanted to mention like 5 minutes ago was we were talking about police officers living in the city of Portland. I've talked to a couple people in the last year there's, the police culture is very hard to penetrate. It's, it's the thin blue line. Police officers can be very secretive and very suspicious. But I've heard stories about cops being very, very careful about what restaurants they go to, because if people know they're a police officer, there have been instances in Portland in the last couple of years where there have been a couple cops that ate in a restaurant they don't normally eat in, and they got food poisoning. And so and you wonder, how does this happen? Because there are people that work in the food industry that are part of the vocal minority. There are people that absolutely hate cops. And so I think part of the reason a lot of Portland police officers don't want to live in Portland and want to live outside of the city limits is just because they feel safer. So should they live in Portland? Probably, but it's kind of understandable why a lot of them choose not to, especially in today's climate when you have so many acts of just egregious racism and white police officers killing people of color nationwide that are just so outrageous that it really kind of compels the public to just really hate law enforcement no matter what, and that's sad to see.
I think that the policemen need their anonymous time. They should be able to go home, hang up their uniform, put the police car away, and be Joe citizen, not living in the neighborhood where I used to be a cop. They need that away time, that free time. I'm just Joe Bogle and Fred Myers. So I don't want to live in the district where I work. I don't want to park my police car in front of the house. I want my anonymity.
When you think of the in the last 5 years, when you think of the number of ambushes that have happened, mostly out of state, but it was just a few years ago that those 4 cops were blown away in Washington.
Yeah, I remember that.
And that was just awful. Cops are afraid. They're afraid to become known in Portland, and I can understand why a lot of them wouldn't want to live in the Portland area.
No, and getting back to you aspect there, what about you when you were a cop during those days? I can remember the respect, they would have coffee and various restaurants, and people would love the idea of just going and would say, hey, thanks for serving, and they knew their neighbors, community policing, knowing their neighbors and talking and whatever. You talked about the soft uniform aspect of it. I think that's a good idea. We used to have a rose on the police cars, if you will. City of Roses, if you will. We don't have that. Looking like ninjas and whatever. That's a fact.
It is.
See, so we need to talk about solutions. And I hope that they're listening to what we're talking about and have those discussions.
Well,
those discussions. What do you think?
It was a different time, and we ate on duty at just about any place we wanted to without any fear.
Okay.
We had our regular spots, of course, but there was not that fear of assassination. It was a different time, too. I was the only gun in the neighborhood. Citizens weren't allowed to carry guns, and I was pretty strict about that. Most policemen were, so it was a completely different time. But then on the other hand, I didn't live in the neighborhood. I moved to Gresham.
Okay.
And I moved to Gresham because I realized how unsafe it was in Portland. So.
And now it's even worse.
And now it's even worse. Yeah, it's not even safe in Gresham.
Well, I don't know. I don't know if it's worse now. I mean, the North End is actually safer now than it was 50 years ago.
Yeah, it's because it's been gentrified to a different city.
Yeah.
The property is being bought up. Now they got high rises, and they're thinking that they're going to get maybe high tech folks coming in, paying for maybe $1,000, $2,000 a month.
I would
bedroom.
I would guess that the crime rate's not any lower. It's just different crimes that are being committed.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, there's no Albina ghetto like there was. It's been gentrified to a much safer, a much more pleasant place to be nowadays. I mean, you can ride your bicycle down down Williams Avenue.
You're right.
And not be afraid anymore.
You're right.
Yeah.
Well, and like I said, it's an issue, but in all due respect, the mayor made that decision.
He did.
And at the end of the day, it's still going to be on his plate. He needs to understand that. This is not just, quote, throw some black woman in the front of me or have her come over here and talk about the issues of the city. I don't want to see her. I want to see him sitting at the chair telling us exactly, because it's us, the people, who are saying, hey, I'm interested in safeness, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You developed a plan. Come back and get it to sign off on this deal, and you give it to your chief, and hey, police, train accordingly and just implement. But no, so I agree with you. I mean, sure, I want to talk about her, but I want to talk to the mayor.
Exactly.
He is the mayor of the city of Portland.
Yeah.
He, at the end of the day, it's his selection. That's what he did. And then whether it be, I don't know who he's going to get for deputy chiefs. That's not my problem.
Right.
He can even pick those too if he wants to. He has that right, right? Fair?
Yeah, he does. He has the power of assignment. He can assign.
Yeah, he can sign anything he wants
So,
to.
the thing that she can do and should do is reorganize the police so we put more policemen on the street.
Okay.
That she can do.
Okay.
Simply administratively, she can do that. What she can't do is implement community policing, because community policing would mean hiring another 1,000 cops. If you want to see cops in the neighborhood on the foot, you got to hire another 1,000 of them. That's what community policing is. So we talk, but it will never happen. If you're not willing to hire another 1,000 policemen, so you see them walking in the neighborhoods, and you walk in the streets, hi, Officer Joe, that's community policing. That will never happen in this city without more policemen. A lot more policemen. But you can take the policemen you have and better organize them so that there's more cops on the street.
What about street watch? Remember we had that whole deal with citizens who were
Well, that's
actually
never
walking the deal. Why didn't that work?
That's not a good idea because they're not trained people.
Right. Yeah.
You know, they're
But
They're
everybody-
civilians.
But everybody got guns now, you know.
Well,
That's
yeah,
NRA, I mean.
okay.
Don't we all have guns now?
no.
No.
We don't all have guns.
We don't have guns?
No.
Well, let me pull mine outside. Oh, no. All right. But no, not trying to be facetious about it. But hopefully we're talking about solutions. So would you have any
I'm
problem?
offering solutions.
There you go. But
I hope they're listening.
would you have a problem
This is how
if,
we need to fix this mess.
would you have a problem if Wheeler called you up and talked to you a little bit?
No, not at
Oh,
all.
he'll never do that. He'd never do that.
Wait a minute. Oh, yes,
because
he
he's
would.
an elitist.
No, he would do that for Don. Don's
So
got
we
the
need
experience.
that. This is
What
how we fix
about if the new chief called you up? Would you chat
Of
with her?
course, of course.
Would you?
The
do
new
that?
chief needs to read Dawn's book,
Yeah.
Behind the Badge in River City, a Portland police memoir. She needs to understand the history of the Portland Police Bureau, and that's a good book. It's not a pat on the back. It's not a rosy tale of success only. It's a really hard-boiled book about the reality of the Portland Police Bureau and the corruption that existed in the 60s
And
and
then
the
there's
70s.
JD. That's why I got you guys right here. He's written several books
Yes.
about specifically Portland.
Yes.
And you know that
That's
history kind of relates, if you will, to where we are
I
right
think
today.
it does. I think it
Would
does.
you have a problem if she give you a call? Or?
No, I'd be happy to talk
How
with
about
her.
how about the mayor?
I'd be happy to talk with him too.
Okay. Does he have? Do they have copies of your book?
I don't know.
Okay.
They should. Everyone should have copies of my book.
I agree with it. Well, Voters Digest does, because we're going to be on talking about this deal. And this is not in all due respect, it's a very important piece. So in terms of, this is not a sales kind of a deal. It's just information and education. That's what I've gotten out of the kind of books that they've written. You know, and it's not fictitious and whatever. These are factual accounts aspect of it, sort of the names aspect of it, but that's where we were. We're not trying to convict anybody from that end of it,
Right.
but that's the history of this town as it relates to law enforcement.
Right.
Yeah, well,
We need to take these history books that JD's written and spread them out so you recognize the history
Yes.
of the corruption
Yes.
in the
Yes.
city that has, of course, has to involve the police
Yes,
department
yes,
too.
yes.
But the whole city's been.
Yes.
Yes.
yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
You know,
it's never been
from-
just the police bureau.
No,
No.
It's the whole
City
the whole
Hall is
city.
a criminal enterprise.
But
you know,
this
you
is
said.
but this is a major concern now,
Yes.
and that's why we're trying to we're focusing
Yeah.
on that piece. We can do the other thing,
Yeah.
like for instance, we may hit a little bit of that the next week aspect of it. Look, we're going to take a short break aspect of it, and I understand you've got a guest that's going to be coming on. You want him to see that guy named Fred Stewart? You recognize that name?
I remember him, you know.
Okay, we're going to take a short break, and we're going to have Don's guest going to come and share some thoughts with us. And okay, we're going to take a short break. We'll be right back. Okay.
So it's Fred.
You are watching Oregon Voters Digest. This program can be seen again on these channels on these dates and times. Tell a friend.
Nice lady.
Welcome back, folks, to Oregon Voters Digest. Again, I'm Bruce Broussard, your host, and that's Teresa Depay, another host aspect of it. We got another pacer, J.D. Chandler, who's another host, and then we got another one that's going to be coming on, and that's Don Depay. And Don, I mean, we're just all over the place, okay? Fred Stewart. Stewart. What was that?
No, I'm not Don.
Oh, that's right, I forgot.
Don looks better.
I thought they all look alike to me. I mean,
Don looks better.
These high note folks, they're involved in whatever. They're all in the same camp. We are in the same camp. We're doers. I mean, we're out there making things happen to better, if you will, our way of life, and that's what it's all about. Got me? Yeah. I enjoy it. That's why I enjoy the show and aspect of it, and we have the freedom to just share those thoughts. And again, I want to welcome. I welcome these guys before Fred, as far as coming on the show, and thanking you for being on the Oregon Voters Digest. You've been on there for years. You voice your opinions. As far as I'm concerned, they're right on. I mean, that's what it's all about, because we're all creatures of our exposure, bottom line, okay? And I've always maintained that a negative is far more positive than a positive at times. And because you can ask questions when you get a negative, but you can't do it if it's just a positive, you know what I'm saying? But anyway, I want to thank you, okay? Coming on, okay?
Oh, thank you. Thanks for the invite. Anytime.
So tell you what we're going to do this time around. We're gonna kind of regurgitate a little bit about police, and then maybe even share a little bit about the newly elected superintendent of public schools here in Portland. It's kind of a neat piece, because that has something to do with educating those kids and educating through that system.
And it's another big mess.
Big mess aspect of it. So look, why don't we start off with you, and maybe we're talking about police aspect of it. If you can kind of talk a little bit about the selection process, and what do you think? What do you think? Just whatever's on your mind.
Well, the only thing I know about the selection process, I mean, ultimately, no matter what any committee the mayor puts together, it's the mayor's decision. Ultimately.
That's right.
Okay, so it doesn't matter what the committee says. But this last committee that Ted Wheeler put together, I said it before, it's one of the best committees that's been put together. There's a few people on there that I wouldn't have put on there. They're just do-nothings. And they got a long history of do-nothing. But it's one of the better ones. It's better than, I think, any committee that any mayor before would have put together. I mean, I'll give him a super A+ for effort.
Well, you mentioned Brown, Richard Brown.
Yeah, Richard Brown was on there.
Former Navy.
Richard Brown's a straight shooter.
Yep.
He really is. And he's and Richard does what he does because he cares about the community. He doesn't care whether you agree with him or not. I mean, he's not an arrogant man or
like
nothing.
You.
Well, yeah, but I mean, he's more wise. He's more wise. But no, but I mean, he's a straight shooter.
When I say like you understand.
And I know any
he voices his opinion.
Any committee like that they got Richard Brown on, I know is going the right direction. But this woman, I would talk more with people like these two who've got history of studying the Portland police. But from what I know, when you get outside the culture of Portland, especially outside of the Portland police, it usually ends badly. And each time it's happened, it got worse. With Kroger just being a complete, just bad.
That was bad.
He was bad like the first week. Yeah. You know what I mean? It was like from Jump Street, Kroger was hitting hard.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is, I'm personally going to give her a shot, because I want the best. But I do feel that the history of Portland police is important in this, and understanding the challenges that she's facing and what's in front of her, because they are real. And this is going over what? When was the first time a police chief from outside our culture was hired?
Well, it isn't that common a thing.
Yeah.
The one that I always think of, and it's because I did research it, was Charles Prey.
Yeah.
Who Dorothy Lee brought in. He was from the Oregon State Police.
In the 50s?
Late 40s.
Okay.
Late 40s.
1948.
Yeah.
And he was pretty much clueless. He did not know what was going on in the Portland Police Bureau, and he never was really able to find out. So,
was that the one that they said, you're retired? Basically, the cops came to him and said,
yes,
you're retired.
Go grow your roses in Eastport.
Yeah, or we've got this plot that you need to buy up in Riverview.
I never heard that story.
Or something like that.
Yeah,
but it may not have been Riverview, but basically,
really?
he was informed he was retired.
That is the way they did things in those days.
In those days.
Yeah.
Well, he's famous for saying, everyone knows where the gambling in Portland is except me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
And it's true. The Vice Squad would not talk to him. And that's the kind of thing you face when you have a chief who's from the outside.
Right, exactly.
She's not going to be in with the guys. They're not going to tell her what's going on. She's going to have to find out for herself, and if she doesn't find out, she'll never know.
And
what about our deputy chiefs? What's that all about?
They're in a case like that, they're usually the ones who'll hold the power.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And
We
she's
were
going to need a
talking
lot of
about
support
this.
from the mayor.
We were
Yes.
talking about this on the last show, and I mentioned that very thing. I said she's not going to be in on the rivalries, the conflicts, the alliances of the guys in the upper division, the brass.
Now, theoretically, that can be a good thing, though, because she's not involved in it. She's gone through some really terrible scandals down in Oakland.
Right.
There's been a
Yeah.
lot going on there,
Yeah.
and she's always been on the outside of that, which I think is interesting. I think that she's in a good position. Also, I think Oakland is a pretty good match for Portland. It's our cities are about the same size. They have very similar histories. In a lot of ways, Portland and Oakland are sister cities. So I think there's some. I have hope for her.
Yeah.
Me too.
Portland Police Bureau needs a leader. She looks like a leader.
But I think the two of these should write an article and give some history to Portland so we understand what this woman's facing. Like, you heard some great information here about Chief Prey. I mean, how many Portlanders are outside the law enforcement knows about Chief Prey?
Very
You know, and I know 3 or 4 stories about him. I mean, nothing bad, like he was a bad guy, but it was kind of like what JD just said.
Yeah.
He was always on the outside.
Yeah.
And he was never able to do what Mayor Dorothy McCullough Lee wanted him to do, because he just couldn't get there.
Yeah.
That's actually a really good point, because I talked to a cop about 2 years ago at Central Precinct, and I called to ask for some information or something, but we ended up talking about the article I wrote about the 1941 murder-suicide at East Precinct of Blaine Chase killed Philip Johnson. And
Lieutenant.
he had no idea. He said, I never heard about that. A lot of cops working for Portland Police Bureau don't have a real good grasp of the history of it.
I'd say none of them do.
Yeah.
Especially in the new crowd.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
especially going back more than 40 years
Exactly.
or so.
But is that good? I mean, sometimes
I don't think it's good. I think they should know.
Yeah.
They should
Yeah.
really, it should be up to every Portland police officer to really investigate the history of the Bureau. You know?
Well, I think another historical example that could be instructive here is Burton Lawson, who was the police chief during the 1934 waterfront strike.
Okay.
He was an outsider. He was a friend of the mayor. The mayor, Carson, he had been his commander in World War I. So they had that relationship, and he brought him in thinking a military guy could come and really give some discipline to the police force, which was in as bad a shape as our force right now. But it turned into a horrible political thing. He ended up shooting demonstrators.
Really?
Yeah, and I think that that's kind of applicable because we could be in a situation of that happening in Portland now.
Well, you make a good point. As I'm listening to you, I'm just really taking it in somewhat. Because of what you said, what came out, what's come up in my mindset was that he is also now the chief of police. I'm just throwing that on the table, meaning that it's
The mayor?
Yes,
Yeah.
he's taken on all the responsibility.
Yeah.
She will do as he says.
Well, he's a police commissioner.
Yeah.
No,
So
I understand, but my mindset is that he's the chief of police.
Yeah.
Because when he went out and picked the outsider, so he picked the outsider, very secretive and all this, that, and the other. It wasn't someone that you knew that could compete, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. He just said, hey, there it is. I'm going to be the chief. I'm going to get back to City Hall and I'm going to fight the protesters, blah, blah, blah. I will determine just exactly how that's being handled, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I'm just throwing that out. Any thoughts?
Well, the only thought I get is go back to what I said before earlier. I mean, I think Ted should have called Teresa and JD and had coffee with him, and learned some of these stories.
I'm a nobody in this town.
No, but I'm just saying, no, you guys got the research.
No, but
the thing is,
But he did.
no, I don't think he.
Yes,
I don't
he
think
did.
he sat down with
right
these
here
guys.
right here on the Oregon Voters Digest. All he had to do was turn on the
No, because there's a lot of. If you sit down with these two
switch.
people,
He's heard you.
and Don, and get to talking about the Portland
I know,
police,
yeah.
you're gonna hear some stuff that people just haven't heard, and it all goes to the culture that even is relevant to today.
Yeah.
Because we got basically the same structure that we had way back in the 1930s. So,
Well, that's actually a good point. And you know what that harkens back to? What Don said in his book and what he said repeatedly, which is police work hasn't changed. It's the same today as it was 60 years ago. The only thing that's changed is technology.
Yep.
And that's
And the
what
expectations of the community.
well,
Yeah,
that's
yes,
true.
yes.
That's true. But what frustrates me is there are a lot of people that think Don is just an old man,
He is
and
an
that
old man.
and that
That's why he's so wise.
and that what he thinks is it's dated and it's not valid. Baloney.
Baloney.
He was a street cop for 6 years. He was a detective for 11 years. He was an instructor in the Portland Police Bureau. He taught search and seizure. He coached detectives. He knows a lot, and I wish that more people had a little bit more respect.
Some of those same idiots read Chesty Puller's book, right? I read Chesty Puller's book. Chesty Puller hasn't been a Marine since the 1950s. You know what I mean? But when I was was reading Chesty Puller's book, don't you think I learned a lot about being a Marine? No, some of those people are just jealous that they don't know as much as him.
Well, and I think also
just ignore them.
There are several people that have written books, probably less than 5, about working with the Portland Police Bureau. There was a book that was written by what's his name? He was the chief of police, and Don mentions him in the book. Out of the Blue, or something. You can't even find it up. Ron Still. Ron Still wrote Out of the Blue, and it's basically just a pat on his back. It's not accurate. It's just
still couldn't tell the truth about what he did as police.
Exactly. And there are a couple other guys that have written. There's one other guy that.
Ron Still's a good example.
One other guy wrote a book about being with the Portland Police Bureau and what a fun job it was. And basically, there have been a couple other guys that have written books. They're not accurate. They're not honest. Don's book is an honest portrayal of what it was like, the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Years ago, when I first met Ron Still, he was running against Bud Clark for mayor.
Right.
And I was a member of Kiwanis. And I'm at the Kiwanis Club out in East Multnomah County. And what do you call it? I'm only like 23. I'm in a suit. And I'm at this meeting, and Ron Still's sitting there bragging about when he first got in the police department, how many black people he used to beat up.
Oh, he was terrible.
And you gotta remember, you got a young black guy.
Right.
Now, I'm the youngest guy in the room, so I'm like really a nobody. But Ron is sitting at this table with guys and go, yeah, when I came on, they always called me because, I was a boxer when I was in high school or college, I forgot which one, and I really knew how to punch these guys because, these guys got thick heads.
Right.
And I'm sitting there with my ex-wife, and it's like, man, it's like either he's talking to me. I mean, is he trying to?
Right.
Is he like talking like this because I'm here, and he's like, "What are you going to do?"
That's incredibly insensitive, and I'm not surprised about that at all.
Well, I'm thinking, you're too old for me to beat up.
Right.
But you can't knock me out.
Don saw him. Don saw him, and we almost put it in the book, and we almost named him in the book too. But I convinced Don not to name 2 men that are still alive. He's one of them in the book, just because I wanted to avoid any litigation. But there's a story Don tells of
Don't be afraid of litigation. They're going to lose. When
he was a cop and he was still in his probationary period of 18 months, Ron Still was a patrolman with about 5 years on. And they were going up in the elevator in the old headquarters building, and they had a white kid who was probably in his early 20s who was cuffed. And Ron Still stopped the elevator in between floors and pounded him. A cuffed prisoner, his hands behind his back. And Don was, he didn't do anything because he was on his probationary period. So
he didn't tell that story, but he talked about beating up guys, pulling over, like in the back,
he did.
in alleys and stuff like that. And
he was known as a brute.
And so, beating the hell out of guys.
So they get up to the top floor, where the 5th floor or so, where the jail is, and they had to help this guy out of the elevator because. He just pounded him, his ribs and his kidneys, kidney shots. That's not what a good police officer does. You don't beat a handcuffed prisoner to the point where they're almost unconscious, and that's what he did. So, yeah.
Well, if you look, like I said when I was running last year, when you look at the history of the Portland Police in the early years, it was those are the guys they wanted. They wanted brutes.
Right.
They wanted brutes
aggressive.
because, aggressive because they were dealing with brutes on the street. Some of these old reports I read when I was on PIAC, I'd go into the archives and pull out things for like 1910, and some of these fights, we lost a police officer once in this huge brawl where he ended up getting shot, but it was like a melee. It was like 5 cops and 30 guys, and they wanted guys that would walk into rooms like that and beat up all comers. And I used to tell people last year, do we really do we need that mentality in law enforcement today? It may have been perfect 100 years ago. Maybe it even wasn't perfect then. But I'm just saying. But I think a lot of times we're still somehow hiring cops that have that mentality. There's 5 guys over there. There's only me. I got a gun and a shotgun. The fight is equal. And that's how they look at it.
Well, I think it's important to get cops. Cops have to be able to fight. They have to be aggressive. They have to be strong. But the question is, when do they cross that line, and when do they start abusing power? And I think that Still was well known as an abuser of power.
If the new police chief asked you, I'm going to ask each one of you this question: when does a cop cross the line in that area, as far as being a good cop, doing their job, and of crossing the line to now been abusive? In your research of law enforcement, what would your answer be to that?
Well, I would probably answer that based on what Dawn has told me. When they know they can lie and get away with it.
Ooh. What about you?
Well, I think it comes down to the law. When a cop is a law enforcement officer, that's their purpose. There's nothing else that they're there for. If they're breaking the law, that's completely against what they're doing. Yeah. So it's when a cop breaks the law that they're crossing that line.
Wow. You see how similar those two answers are?
Yeah.
Really, it is. It's real similar.
What do you think, Fred? What would you propose?
I have to agree with them. I mean, that's pretty much what I'm saying, what I'm thinking, but they brought it. But I also think we train cops to go into a situation that escalates it. Their initial into a situation. I mean, I don't know how to get there yet, but where I know we're at right now is the relationship is with a cop. He's going to talk to you. He or she's going to talk to you until they feel they need to shoot you. You understand?
The thing are tactics. And the thing is, Dawn and I have talked about this. Dawn used the chokehold hundreds of times. Nobody died. Dawn has said he could choke someone out, roll them over, and in 90 seconds they would be cuffed. I've watched videos on YouTube of cops in Oregon, cops out of state. There's 2 or 3 cops, and they spend 8-10 minutes struggling and fighting with some guy and getting hurt because they can't use...
the Stevenson murder.
Right.
The cop, that cop killed that guy. You see, I'm a Marine. I know how to do that. Ask anybody who's gone through any advanced infantry training or whatever. What I'm getting to is Stevenson was a U.S. Marine.
I know.
He killed a U.S. Marine.
I know. I know that. But I also know, because I spoke to a retired detective who is a friend of mine, that he was a recreational cocaine user, and the medical examiner said he had a weakened aorta. So that's not saying that he deserved what happened to him. He didn't. But I think that was part of it.
You know, the guy rode bike all the time. I mean, I knew his wife. I met his wife. I know quite a few people in his family. I don't know maybe he did have cocaine. Maybe he had a weakened aorta. But that cop went off on him.
He did.
Yeah.
Because he was a black guy that was upset that he was being accused of doing something he hadn't done. Because, you understand? So this white cop didn't like this uppity black Negro and put him in a chokehold and was very aggressive.
Do you remember which cop it was?
Well, and besides that...
But wait, do you remember which cop it was?
No, I can't remember his name right now.
Barber, right?
Barber.
I've looked at Barber's personnel file, and I can tell you from having researched the personnel files at the archive, Barber had the most letters from citizens and the most commendations of any cop's file I looked in.
Well...
Okay.
So he made a big mistake, but he was a really, really good cop. And
there's another aspect of that Stevenson death that gets overlooked, and that's the fact that they put him in the sleeper hold, they cuffed him, and then they put him in a stress position where he could not breathe.
They put him on top of those bottles,
He would not have. Yes, he
true.
would not have died if he wasn't put in that position.
And what did they put him on? It was a
pallet of bottles.
Right. Okay.
And he with his hands handcuffed behind him, his chest on the bottles, he couldn't expand his chest.
Right.
But Barber, as good as and I know I got a lot of cop friends who feel he was a good cop. I said, bottom line, he goes into this situation. The perpetrators were all white. He goes after the only black guy.
Yes.
And the black guy
was the security
guard, and the black guy was the one that stopped everything. You know what I mean? I said. And they never acknowledge that. That this guy walks into the room and just happens to ignore all the bad white people and goes after the black guy.
And kills him.
And then gets upset that the black guy is offended. You know, I tell my white friends, I said, if I did that to you, if I mistreated you, do you have the right to be disappointed? You know what I'm talking about?
Right.
You know, do you have the right to say, Fred, you're wrong. What you did to me is wrong.
Yeah.
And most of my white friends would say, yeah. But Barber that day didn't feel a black guy had the right to do that. And us black guys deal with that a lot. A lot of white guys get mad at us simply because we get mad at them. You know, and you've seen it with some of these police departments.
Yes.
Some of these police department shootings you've seen. The white guy was okay until the black guy got mad, and then all of a sudden he's a threat.
Exactly.
You know, and really what it is a lot of white guys are raised that a black guy should never challenge them.
Yes.
You know what I'm talking about?
Yes.
And if they do, it just gets incensed. Now, I'm a big old bull. When a white guy gets like that with me, it's really a bad day for both of us. You know what I'm talking about? Because that pisses me off.
I know that.
Yeah, white guys that have that. You know what I'm talking about? Don't get that way with me. But what I'm saying, I'm not saying that's also necessarily good, but it is an aspect of racism that black people have to deal with.
Yeah.
And I think that's what happened that night with that young man.
Yeah.
And Portland cops in Northeast Portland back then, they're used to submissive black men. And when I say used to submissive black men is, you better follow a police officer.
You get shot.
You know, or you're going to get shot. And if you go back, maybe they didn't even care if they shot you, maybe up until 1980.
Yeah.
In other words, all the black guys they shot before, there's no such thing as a bad black shooting.
Exactly.
You know,
Never has been.
It never has been. That's what I'm trying to say. Before 19, it was like a one-day investigation.
Yep.
Oh, he's black. What
That's
did
good.
he? What did he do? Oh, he threatened me.
Even if you showed up to the wrong house and shot the guy who lived in the wrong place.
Exactly. He was a threat.
Wow.
He didn't know me, and I didn't know him, and he's a threat because he's black.
Yeah.
No, Portland police. My grandfather, the stories he used to tell me about the cops here in Portland and how they ran. Portland, at least around him. I mean, it was an absolute power thing between white people and black people. You got to remember, that's how the city of Portland enforced redlining.
Yep.
If you were a black person and you were living in the wrong spot, the cops got to show up.
Yep.
You know what I'm talking about? And if the city felt that you were being a little bit too uppity, you know what I'm talking about? You got arrested.
That's right.
Yeah.
And whatever charge the cop said, that's what the DA ran with.
Exactly.
All right.
Don has agreed.
We got about 8 more minutes aspect of it. I'd like to spend a little time on Virginia for a minute.
Okay.
Let's spend a little time on Virginia. Who wants to start off? Who wants to lead off on this deal?
Go ahead, Fred.
Go on, Fred.
Good and bad. The bad, of course, is these damn Nazis and and everything. But I tell everybody, I posted on Facebook, what really warms my heart is look at how many white people were standing up to this.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That is something I'm glad the world got to see. I think it's important for the rest of the nation to see. We had all these white people. I saw 10 times, maybe 20 times more white people down there than black people confronting them. And like I tell people, it's going to be white people who are really going to have the influence on changing this stuff. I mean, that's what probably even incensed David Duke and his friends even more. Wasn't the black people were upset.
Right.
David Duke doesn't care if a guy like me is upset about what he does. But he sees all these white people there. It was just like when, what's his name, got sued in 91. What's his name? Tom Metzger. Do you remember that press conference?
Yeah.
And the first thing he says in the press conference when he lost is the white people in Portland don't know how to be white. He did not do that press conference directed at me or other.
Right.
He was mad at Portland white people for
Right.
convicting him of being responsible.
Right.
And then locally, to talk in regards to the because of the who's who and the white. Locally, Jamie Partridge, we were talking a little bit about Jamie Partridge. They're putting a vigil, if you will, today
At 5 o'clock.
down at the City Hall. 5 to 6.
For the Virginia.
For Heather Hires.
For Heather Hires.
Yeah, they're doing that now.
Yeah.
At 5 o'clock
God bless
today.
Jamie.
Yeah,
Jamie's always been that way.
He has.
Always.
Let's get it. Okay, go on.
Yeah, and I just want to reiterate, I was 4 years old when Selma, Alabama happened. But all of my life, I've seen the TV video of that, and that's been a very important moment in my life. And I think we're seeing it happen in Charlottesville, Virginia right now.
I agree.
Exactly the same thing.
I agree. By the grandchildren and great-grandchildren of those
Let me
people.
get in. We got just a couple more minutes. Go on. Virginia.
Virginia, it's just more proof. It's proof to me of the incredible evil influence that Trump has on this country.
Absolutely.
Trump is responsible for this. These people are coming out of the woodwork because they're losers, they're ignorant, they're uneducated, they don't have anything going for them. So this is what they can jump on.
So how are we going to solve the problem?
We got to hurry up and vote for somebody else.
No. But my point is that he's president of the United States right now. Give him some direction. What do you say to
We
him?
need to continue to resist,
Resist how?
Resist by, and there's things some people can do. Portland Resistance is a good organization.
Okay.
I definitely believe that. They're very important to Portland. I can't do the things that those kids do because I'm doing other things, that are more personal. I have a black family member who is incarcerated that I'm trying to help. I'm trying to save her life. What I'm doing is a little different, a little more personal, but I guess just basically just
Everybody can do
continue to resist. Yeah.
JD, what do you
And
think?
resistance is the key. We have to resist every step of the way. Being there at Charlottesville is very important. And the woman that died, she's a martyr to what happened. But Teresa's right. Being out there on the street is not for every single person, but there's something that all of us can do. And we have to tap into our creativity and our own energy to resist personally.
Okay.
Yeah.
But he's president of the United States, so what do we say to him?
He's not my president.
No, but he's
He is president of the United States.
But I'm just saying, my point is that let's try to give him something that says, hey, look, it is an issue, but give him an out. This is what you can do, so to speak.
Yeah.
You know?
Well,
Just like what you just said. You know,
he could stop making stupid threats to everybody in the world.
Exactly.
That would be a good start.
The comments he made to South Korea. I mean, come on.
Venezuela.
Yeah. I mean, he's a bully.
Real quick, I got one more minute. Talk to me real quick, buddy.
About what?
About the solution to the president.
About the solution to the president? Midterm elections. Like I told everybody in my Facebook, I'm not even worried about him.
No, what do you say to the president to solving the problem?
Would you please resign?
Yes.
I mean,
Yes,
he can't solve
resign.
it. Trump does not have the skill set or the
Exactly.
inclination
Or the credibility.
or the credibility
Exactly.
to be part of this.
He's
No.
got 70 pending lawsuits for fraud.
Yeah.
He is a criminal.
What we've got to do is make sure the midterm elections are successful. And when I say successful, not successful for the Republicans.
Right.
We got to make sure we get Democrats.
Right.
We got to stop allowing flunky Democrats to get in
Yes.
front of us because these flunkies are the reason why we got Trump.
That's
Right.
These
absolutely
do
right.
nothing failure people gave notion to why not give Trump a chance.
Right.
I voted for nice, good Democrats for years, and I'm still in the same muck that I was in before they came around. So why not give this idiot a chance? They're just as much to blame as anything else for Trump being there.
Yeah.
But we
Right
got to
about
get good people, and we got to defeat these Republicans.
Right.
And we got to do that in 2018.
Yes.
And then in 2020, hope to God we got somebody that's maybe 1/10 of Barack Obama
Right.
that can be the next president.
Yeah.
Right.
You know what I mean? 1/10.
But we'd be better off.
We'd be better off.
Well, hey, on that particular note, this has been exciting. There's a real good show. That we've got good information out there, and hopefully, folks, you understand where it's coming from. And it's coming from you from the Oregon Voters Digest. I'll see you next week, folks. Take
Great
care. Have a
talking
good
to you,
one.
Fred.
Oh, good talking
Good
to you.
job.
Yeah.
Good job, everybody.
You can
Good
see how
job.
that article.
Good job. Good job. JD.